Coming in at number 10, Ashlee Simpson. This one certainly takes the cake when we're talking about uncomfortable live TV appearances. How could we forget the time Ashlee Simpson performed on Saturday Night Live and was caught lip-syncing? In 2004, when booked to perform 2 songs on the show, Simpson ran through a rendition of her single Pieces of Me without a hitch. However, when the pop star returned to the stage to run through the title track of her debut album, Autobiography, things took a turn for the worst. While the band began to play the song, the vocals for the first track began to play, and Simpson paused in horror. The lip-syncing plot had totally collapsed. Clearly panicking, she looked around at the band with the microphone held by her side, with the vocals still beating out unnervingly loud. After pulling off a series of improvised awkward dance moves, she walks off the stage and producers cut the performance and head to a commercial. It was a hugely embarrassing moment that only got worse when she returned to the stage and tried to blame it on her band. To this day, it stands as one of the biggest live TV fails ever. Number 9, Cara Delevingne. In the middle of a promotional tour for her new film, Paper Towns, Cara Delevingne appeared on Good Day Sacramento and went on to have one of the most awkward interviews ever. First off, the anchors called her Carla instead of Cara. Then they proceeded to ask her whether or not she had read the John Green book on which the film is based, and why she didn't seem more excited to be on the show despite making millions from the movie. But Cara was clearly not having it and pretty much refused to respond to their questions. Instead, she took a bit more of a sarcastic approach, but the anchors pushed back and almost seemed to be mocking her the whole time. Quote, "You do seem a bit irritated, maybe it was just us." But when Cara agreed with her, the host said, "We'll let you take a little nap and maybe get a Red Bull," essentially kicking her off the show. Despite being tired after the final premiere for the film the night before, Cara soldiered on at first, but the show was clearly trying to embarrass her because she wasn't going to play ball with their patronizing questions. Number 8, Justin Bieber. On the first night of his world tour, Justin Bieber didn't throw up once, but he threw up twice. After vomiting all over the center stage, the teen star blamed his stomach issues on drinking too much milk before the concert. But unfortunately, the puke fest was all captured on camera. The concert in Glendale, Arizona started out okay, and everything seemed to be going well and fine until he started performing Out of Town Girl, which meant he had to get very physical, running upstairs and getting really groovy with the backup dancers. But the movements proved a little bit too much for Bieber, as suddenly he turned his back to the crowd, bent over, and straight up barfed. He then rushed backstage as a panic and embarrassment set in. A few minutes later, he returned and tried to slow the songs down because he was still feeling a little bit queasy, but clearly his stomach was still not having it and he ran off stage again. He told the crowd, quote, "It's hard for me, you know, not feeling great and throwing up in front of a bunch of people. Will you love me even though I'm throwing up on stage?" And his die-hard teenage fans cheered in approval. A few days later, the singer finally tweeted a reason for his retching and just wrote that milk before a concert was a bad choice.
And at number 7, Danny Devito. This next one is lovable comedian Danny Devito. The interview actually starts with Devito admitting that he was hungover AF as he was out drinking with George Clooney the night before. I guess a humble brag there. He also said he had 7 limoncellos right before the interview and that they were finally catching up to him. He then starts talking about President Bush and making crazy facial expressions and noises to imitate him. Then when he literally looks like he's gonna fall asleep or pass out, Rosie O'Donnell brings him over to cuddle with her. Honestly, Danny Devito is the best, and this interview just made me love him even more, you know?
Number 6, Kendall Jenner. The Keeping Up with the Kardashians star obviously had Harry Styles on her mind when she accidentally introduced the band 5 Seconds of Summer as One Direction during the 2014 Billboard Music Awards. Kendall got off to a good start, beginning her introduction with, "The band about to rock the Billboard Awards comes from down under, but the direction they're heading is straight up. Recently, they made their debut at 2 on the Billboard 200. She continued with, "Now we welcome One," and it seemed like she was ready to say direction when she completely realized her mistake and laughed uncomfortably. She apologized, saying, "Guys, I'm the worst reader." Luckily for her, a brief recorded intro segment took Kendall out of her embarrassment for a second before the spotlight came back to her. This time she finally got the name right, yelling 5 seconds of summer as the boys jumped into their song. The whole incident was pretty bad, but I wouldn't call it the most humiliating thing that's ever happened on live TV. Of the awkward scale, it was probably a 6 at most. Number 4, John Travolta. He was introducing Idina Menzel to sing Let It Go from Frozen, and he completely butchered her name in front of thousands of viewers. On the night, Travolta introduced her by saying he'd perform the Oscar-nominated, gorgeously empowering song Let It Go from the Oscar-winning animated movie Frozen. Please welcome the wickedly talented one and only Adele Dazeem. It was extremely funny to say the least. And when asked about the mishap, Travolta said, "I've been beating myself up all day. Then I thought, what would Idina Menzel say? She'd say, let it go." Of course, it was embarrassing, but his situation is pretty relatable to me considering that I mess up celebrity names all the time. The moment has been discussed and referenced a lot since then, but Menzel recently revealed exactly what was going through her head when Travolta butchered her name. In an interview with James Corden, during carpool karaoke, she said, "I had 8 seconds after he screwed up my name. First, I really felt sorry for myself. Like Meryl Streep's out there, it's my big break and he just effed up my name." But according to Menzel, when the band started, she didn't have time to think about it and just went right on with the show.
In at number 3, Mariah Carey. I hope you guys remember the absolute train wreck that was Mariah Carey's performance at the 2016 New Year's Rockin' Eve Bash. But if you didn't, we're here to give you a little reminder. Basically, she came out, missed a ton of her dance moves, and then made it incredibly obvious that she was lip syncing when the track was playing, and she was literally just standing there. And while the track is playing, she's just like talking in the mic and saying a bunch of random stuff about how they didn't rehearse the performance at all. And yeah, with the New Year's show that is like live across the globe, you obviously want to make sure that you're pretty well rehearsed, right? Even though the event was incredibly embarrassing for Mariah, I'm hoping that she at least learned her lesson.
And coming in at number 1, Steve Harvey. While he has proven to be a reliable pageant host for the past 3 years, it's nearly impossible to forget his giant fail in front of millions back in 2015, which will likely go down in history as Steve Harvey's most embarrassing moment. So what happened exactly? Well, he wrongly announced that Miss Colombia had won the competition, when in fact it was Miss Philippines. After he announced Colombia as the winner, he left the stage and Adriana Gutierrez was crowned. But the cheering had already begun when Steve awkwardly had to walk back on stage and revoke his declaration. Quote, "I have to apologize. The first runner-up is Colombia, Miss Philippines. Take your walk as Miss Universe." The blunder immediately took the world by surprise, prompting a flurry of reactions. Some were sympathetic towards Miss Colombia, while others were downright angry. In fact, the Miami Herald reported at the time that a Colombian law firm threatened to file a lawsuit, claiming that the crown is an acquired right and cannot be taken away from us. In early 2016, Steve finally took the time to clarify how the disaster happened, and it's pretty simple. Apparently, the name on the teleprompter was a different name to the one that was on the card.
And at number 10, Miley Cyrus. This one is the most recent wardrobe malfunction. While Miley was on stage performing during her New Year's Eve special that she was hosting with Pete Davidson, her tiny strappy shirt broke during the performance, and thankfully she was able to catch it before it was a live TV disaster. Miley caught the falling shirt, turned around to expose her bare back, then started walking off stage while still performing. The cameras panned to the musicians playing on stage, and within seconds Miley was back on stage performing in a different outfit, although the red blazer that she came back on stage with was almost as revealing as the other one. Hopefully Miley's stylists learned their lesson with that outfit. And at number 9, Sarah Jessica Parker. Well, on Watch What Happens Live with Andy Cohen, SJP embraced the rips on her beautiful dress and laughed it off while showcasing the rips to the audience. While on the show, she wore a green velvet Alberta Ferretti gown dress with a touch of lace on the parts of the dress. After Andy complimented her on the dress, she admitted that she tore multiple rips in the sleeves of the dress. She said, quote, "I love the dress, I borrowed it. This is in no way reflects on the house of Ferretti. Most celebrities would have done everything possible to cover up the imperfections in the dress, but instead she embraced it, believing that they added character to the look. She added, quote, "I kind of dig this, it does something to this dress." And at number 8, Cara Delevingne. Unfortunately, Cara Delevingne has had a few wardrobe malfunctions in her day that exposed quite a bit. The latest was when she was featured on the Friends reunion special when she modeled an iconic dress from the show. The cast of Friends were overjoyed to see Delevingne walking out in a recreation of the very tacky bridesmaids look that Jennifer Aniston's character Rachel wore to her ex-fiancé Barry's wedding. It's a bright pink Pepto-Bismol-esque dress and a matching hat that is one of the poofiest I have ever seen. Rachel wore the dress in the season 2 finale, which was titled The One with Barry and Mindy's Wedding. In the episode, Rachel suffers a wardrobe malfunction, and when she steps out in the dress, her bright red panties are exposed. Delevingne copied the exact same scenario and exposed her butt in some bright red panties that were also caught in the dress, exactly the same way that Rachel's had been.
Number 7, Janet Jackson. The infamous wardrobe malfunction that shook the entertainment world happened on stage during the 2004 Super Bowl halftime show to none other than Janet Jackson. No one could forget when Janet and Justin Timberlake performed Rock Your Body, and as Timberlake reached the final note, he pulled off a piece of Jackson's costume, which was essentially her bra cup, and flashed an estimated 143 million viewers. According to Janet's publicist, the moment was only meant to reveal her red bra underneath, but a wardrobe malfunction resulted in the entire thing coming off. Viewers were shocked. Janet's career spiraled and immediate scandal ensued. Since then, the incident has inspired numerous performances, songs, and TV episodes. In fact, last year, FX and Hulu released a documentary called Malfunction, the dressing down of Janet Jackson, which aimed to explore the racial and cultural currents that collided on the Super Bowl stage. Interestingly enough, the stylist who was behind Janet's Super Bowl look, Wayne Scott Lucas, told Page Six that Justin was behind it all because he wanted to upstage Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, and Madonna, who kissed at the 2003 MTV Music Video Awards just a few months earlier.
And at number 6, Jennifer Garner. Thanks to celebrities like Kim Kardashian being open about their use of shapewear like Spanx, this wardrobe malfunction is a lot less embarrassing than it would have been back in the day when women pretended they didn't wear these things. While Garner was on the red carpet for a premiere of a new movie, she was posing with co-star Steve Carell when she accidentally lifted up her own dress and exposed her Spanx to the world. The premiere was for the movie Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day. Garner was wearing a little black dress by Valentino featuring a multi-layered tiered skirt. Garner was trying to get the perfect pose when she put her clutch to her side. The only problem was she didn't realize she was grabbing at her dress at the same time, which exposed basically everything underneath her dress. Although I'm sure she was glad she was wearing Spanx that day and didn't show off her underwear. Halfway through at number 5, Bill Murray. Bill Murray is known for being one of the most iconic comedians of all time, but you might not have known that he also holds the spot for one of the most legendary drunk interviews of all time too. In 2015, he appeared on David Letterman's TV show, where he is seen taking multiple shots of vodka on air. But that's not the story though. Where things get crazy is when Murray then goes on to MSNBC during a live broadcast and interrupts Lawrence O'Donnell's segment while it's live on air. Then when he finally sits down to wait to go on the show, he completely falls off one of those high chair stool sort of things onto the ground. Then during the interview, he slurs like crazy while trying to answer some questions, and pretty much there's absolutely no doubt that he was wasted. And at number 4, Charli XCX. Charli XCX had a COVID wardrobe malfunction in the comfort of her own home, so thankfully she was able to refilm the incident and it wasn't actually put on live TV. However, because she likes to make fun of herself, she posted the clip on her own Instagram after the awards went live. During the ARIA Awards in November of 2021, Charli presented an award to Justin Bieber and the Kid Laroi for their single Stay. In the mishap, after she waved goodbye, the strap of her dress slipped and her breast immediately became exposed. She was obviously shocked and tried to cover herself up as soon as possible, but because it wasn't really live, she was able to laugh it off. She re-recorded her presentation without any nip slips for the actual show, but thankfully she shared the clip to social media so we could all enjoy it.
Number 3, 50 Cent. Over the past few years, we've seen some absolutely terrible attempts involving celebrities throwing out first pitches. For instance, Carly Rae Jepsen's infamously terrible pitch was pretty great to watch, but not for 1 second does anyone doubt that 50 Cent's pitch tops the list because of that one fateful Mets game in 2014. Despite winding up in a normal motion and finishing with his foot forward, he threw the ball at least 20 feet to the left of the home plate. In fact, when his hand released the ball, it went so far off target that it almost hit the camera crew. The rapper managed to embarrass himself in front of the whole Mets stadium and its fans, as well as on live TV. The whole thing gets worse when you consider how hyped up he was to pitch in the first place, because he had been dreaming of that moment for a very long time, and it would have sucked to mess up in front of his idols and their fans.
And at number 2, Cardi B. With all the scandalous outfits that Cardi wears along with her dancing, it's not hard to believe she landed on this list. Cardi's actually had a few wardrobe malfunctions go down over the years. One time while she was performing at the Bonnaroo Festival, her jumpsuit ripped right around the zipper and exposed part of her butt to the crowd. Right as it happened, she told the crowd, quote, "I just want to let y'all know that my outfit ripped." But that didn't stop her from twerking, and she continued to perform the set as if nothing happened. Once the rip got too big to ignore, she simply covered it up with a bathrobe, which she wore for the rest of the performance. At one point, it even looked like the bathrobe might have a malfunction of its own. And finally, number 1, Meghan Markle. Meghan Markle proved she's just like the rest of us when she was caught still having the tag on a new dress that she bought. While she was getting off the plane in the Kingdom of Tonga, paparazzi caught that the tag was still attached to her red self-portrait dress on October 25th. The tag was at the very bottom of the dress, so it's understandable why she didn't notice it beforehand. I don't think anyone was able to see the price because I wonder how much her dresses cost. I mean, that's what I'm interested in. Meghan was pregnant and on a tour through that region for weeks beforehand, so she was probably just too tired to check. Starting off at number 10, we have Kanye West. So starting at number 10, we have one that you should all know if you love sipping some good old tea, and that is Kanye West's Grammy incident. In one of the most famous and unexpected outbursts of all time, Kanye West interrupted Taylor Swift's acceptance speech at the MTV VMAs in 2009.
I'm really happy for you. I'm gonna let you finish, but Beyonce had one of the best videos of all time.
While Taylor Swift was on stage accepting her award for Best Female Music Video, Kanye famously yelled, quote, "Taylor, I'm really happy for you, I'm gonna let you finish, but Beyonce had one of the best videos of all time," which was a complete shock to everyone and was embarrassing as hell for pretty much everyone involved, including Beyonce, who I'm sure was not happy that Kanye did that. Thankfully, he could blame the tirade on being wasted, or the world might never have forgiven him. A lot of people still haven't, but rightfully so. And at number 9, Drew Barrymore. Drew Barrymore embarrassed herself on the Alan Carr show when she fumbled her words and ended up saying something a bit naughty. While her and Toni Collette were on the show promoting their new film, Miss You Already, a slightly sauced Drew Barrymore told a seemingly raunchy story about herself and Michael Stipe, with her saying in the interview that Toni emailed him saying, "Would you?" And he replied, "Yes, I would, absolutely." And with everyone being a little confused, Alan clarified, "For the music, right?" And then a very flustered Drew put her hand on her face and said, "This is why you don't drink on talk shows." Then she tried to change the subject by joking around, saying, "Any foof, it worked." And when she said that, Alan Carr looked more than a little uncomfortable. And he told her that in the UK, foof means, lady parts. And there was a hot debate over whether that word actually meant what he thought, with Toni adding that fanny is usually meant when talking about that region, not foof. Let me know below. I've never heard foof. I didn't know what that means. Sorry if I'm offending you by saying that. Foof. I'll say it again. And at number 8, Ben Affleck. Now this one gets a little creepy. During a Ben Affleck interview in 2004 with a French-Canadian reporter where he was promoting his new movie Jersey Girl, which is also just an amazing movie, side note. During the interview, Affleck was just straight up acting really gross, commenting on the cleavage of the interviewer and asking why she covered up for him in this interview when, quote, "her are usually out." There was also this really strange moment where they were like cuddling on a couch, and he keeps saying just really creepy stuff, like I had serious secondhand embarrassment for the both of them. Many blamed his shameful behavior on him most likely being drunk. However, in 2017, the video resurfaced and the interviewer came out saying that the whole thing was actually staged and that people shouldn't feel bad for her as everything that happened was fully consented by her. And since this is a really strange thing to admit to years later, that makes no sense at all. Kinda called BS here. But even if it was staged, he was probably still, at least a little drunk. And at number 7, Nikki Hilton. Nikki Hilton wore a risque gown with see-through panels that ended up showing off her entire backside while she was walking up the stairs. On July 5th of 2015, Hilton attended the Versace fashion show in Paris, but it's clear she didn't practice going up the stairs in the dress because photographers got some photos of her bare butt showing in the see-through parts of the dress. The mishap happened days before she got married to her fiancé, James Rothschild, at the Kensington Palace. And since she was walking a red carpet into the venue, there were tons of paparazzi snapping photos of the awkward blunder. And at number 6, John Stamos. John Stamos is someone that I think a lot of people could see themselves, cutting loose and having a drink with. And if you want a sneak peek into how he might act on a night out, look no further than an interview that he did on an Australian morning show. In the start of this clip, it's pretty obvious that he's been drinking, and after the interviewer makes a comment about it, he admits that there's straight up vodka in his glass. Then John Stamos goes off on a reporter that called him out for being tired after his long flight, and when the host claims that he can't take criticism well, John says it was all just a low blow. Then when they start talking over each other for a bit, John looks off camera and yells, "She won't let the guests talk." Which was a bit rude, but very true in the moment. Then at the end he gets the name of the paper and tells his fellow Greeks to not buy the paper. So it's safe to say he made, quite an impression down under.
Number 5, Madonna. Fans have named Madonna's epic fall on stage at the Brit Awards as the most embarrassing moment in the show's history. The Cape incident during the 2015 Brit Awards is something that will never be forgotten. What happened exactly? Well, Madonna was closing out the show as she was performing her new single at the time called Living for Love. As a part of her routine, she stood on the top of a platform on stage and attempted to untie the floor-length cape that she was wearing. Her backup dancers tried to remove the garment, but they pulled it back so strongly that instead it dragged her backwards down 3 steps and she went tumbling. Madonna was forced to stop singing as the panicked dancers helped her stand up, but after a few seconds of recovery, she went on to complete her performance. The 63-year-old issued a statement later saying that she was fine and that her cape had been tied too tight. To make matters worse, an average of 5.3 million people tuned into the ceremony on ITV. So the instant that Madonna hit the deck, that was the only aspect of the Brit Awards that people were going to be talking about the next day.
And at number 4, Steve-O. Jackass prankster and wild child Steve-O definitely lived up to his jackass reputation on Comedy Central's Too Late with Adam Carolla. And it's a pretty common thing, especially with comedians, that they'll drink before an interview and usually before a comedy set too. So Steve-O ended up getting so wasted backstage that during the interview he started yelling a bunch of swear words while also spitting, and later in the segment attempting to rugby tackle the show's host, Adam Carolla, to the floor. Steve-O at one point also fell over, shattering a glass coffee table with his foot and slicing his leg open in the process. Ouch, that must have hurt. When Carolla tried to laugh off the craziness and rescue the show, it was proved that Steve-O could not be tamed, and at the end had to be escorted out by security. After the insane interview, Steve-O said that he woke up and had no recollection of ever being on the show, but that he was insanely proud of himself for how funny it ended up being. And thankfully that kind of thing is very on brand for him, because if a more chill celeb were to have done that, I'm sure their career would have taken a major hit. And at number 3, Lil Nas X. This one is my personal favorite for 2021 because it happened on SNL, where the cameras basically never cut. During this May 2021 performance, he was singing his latest hit, Montero, Call Me By Your Name. While performing incredibly intense dance moves, he was wearing very tight pants, and I'm sure you can guess where this is going. At one point he started to pole dance, and that's where it all went downhill. But halfway through the pole performance, Lil Nas X grabbed for his private areas to cover them up after the rip, making sure nothing had shown on television. After the performance, he tweeted, quote, "I know I do a lot of planned shit, but ripping my pants on live television is not one of them." And at number 2, TJ Miller. While TJ Miller, the funny man in Silicon Valley, was on Colbert for an interview, there was no doubt he was absolutely sloshed. It starts off very uneasy with Miller talking about how Colbert is his wife's favorite comedian, which is obviously a little awkward because, Miller himself is obviously a comedian. And during the interview, he is just so annoying that Colbert genuinely looks like a little ticked off. At one point, Miller is trying to make a joke about the Critics' Choice Awards, and while everyone is incredibly confused, he smashes an egg on his face. And he finishes the segment by touching Colbert with his creepy, skeleton hands. But clearly Colbert pokes some fun at Miller, and the YouTube video of the segment is called, quote, "So Things Got Weird with TJ Miller." And this is why I cannot help but love Colbert. Even with that I'm sure, very annoying situation. You know, he still made a joke out of it. Also, I wonder whoever had to like clean up that egg, they probably are not a fan of TJ Miller now, let's just say that. And at number 1, Fergie. I'm giving Fergie the number 1 spot here, not because hers is like the most popular or well-known, but honestly, I just think it's the funniest and the most ridiculous. During the Trevor Live Gala, Armie Hammer was presenting an award. When Fergie randomly appeared on stage, Hammer ended up giving her the mic, probably because he wasn't sure like what was going on and thought it was her time to speak for some reason. Anyway, she ended up calling herself Armie Hammer and then slurring her words while trying to talk, but after she sat back down, she wasn't done yet. When another performer walked off stage because of technical issues, Fergie jumped out of her seat and got on stage unscripted and started talking to the crowd again. And there was no doubt here that Fergie was definitely not sober.